Thank you for joining me for another Friday Facts and Stats with Carrie. This week, we're going to dive into the triangle statistics as a whole. The numbers for December 2025 have just come out, so we're going to look at that as compared to the year before, year-to-date numbers, quarterly numbers, and what that means for you in the coming year. All right, you're going to see these first two numbers probably a bit because it's the easiest one for agents to grab. You're going to see the average sales price compared in December 2025 to 2024. In 24, it was 410. In 25, that number is 407,650. So looking at that number alone, people are going to be like, oh, the prices are going down. But you really have to dig into those numbers a little bit more because the year-to-date number reveals something different. In year-to-date numbers, the average sales price is $412,500. And the average of 2025 is $414,654. Those are still pretty close. So I wouldn't say we're seeing any drastic reductions. In fact, we're seeing an increase if you look at the year to date. I think Q4 was a little bit harder than the other quarters. So that's going to be reflected in some of those other numbers. But the year to date overall average, we are actually seeing a slight increase over 2024. Now let's look at the total sales count. How many transactions were there? In 2024, there were 34,834. And in 2025, there were 36,220. So we're seeing actually more homes sold than over the previous year in 24. The percent of sales of original sales price, because if you drop the price and then you drop it again, this is going back to that original price that it was originally listed for. In 24, the average year-to-date number was 97.9% of average list price. And in 25, it went down a little bit to 96.5%. I decided to dig a little bit deeper and go into just the fourth quarter with that number because that's what's actually most relevant to you if you're planning to sell in Q1 or Q2. In Q4, we saw 97% in 2024, and in Q4, we saw 95.6% in Q4 of 2025. So we're seeing less of that original sales price. So people were trying to push their limit a little bit with the sales price when they were listing their house, and ultimately, it came down to what the market could bear. Average days on market year to date was 19 in 2024. And it was 30 in 2025. This is year-to-date numbers. In Q4 of 2024, so that last quarter, we saw an average days on market of 27 days. And Q4 of 2025, an average of 38. So homes are sitting longer on the market as they try to get that list price. And ultimately, we're ending where we need to end. That's what so far I'm seeing in those numbers. Now, the concessions, this is a little bit of one of those categories where the agents have to self-regulate. They have to put this number in. Not everybody does it, but you could argue that the same agents who did it in 2024 are likely to do it in 2025. But I always like to say that because this is kind of one of those fields that maybe they didn't remember to put the seller concessions there. Maybe they only put the repairs that were agreed upon, but not the original concessions from the original contract. But hopefully the same agents who didn't do it in 24 didn't do it in 2025. So this number is at least consistent, if not accurate. So in Q4, we saw 47.6% of the transactions have concessions. And in 25, we saw 56.9% have a concession. So what does that mean for you in 2026 if you plan to buy, sell, or build? Stay tuned. If you want to know what this means for your property specifically, we have to dial these numbers in really specifically to your neighborhood, your area with similar sized home with similar updates and figure out how to get those buyers into your property so you have a low days on market with a high percent of original list price and you can move on to the next house or wherever you're going in 2026. Let me know if I can help.